AITA for wanting to cut off contact with my son, knowing it means I will never meet my grandson. Buckle up, kids, this is not going to be a pretty ride. Also, this is a burner account and names, locations, anything identifiable has been altered so that I can share this without further fear of harassment. For a brief backstory before I begin, it is important to know that my family, myself included, struggles with mental illness. Only a handful of us have sought the appropriate treatments and are relatively stable, or at least we are the good, fun kind of crazy. I am in the handful. My son is not. This is important later. My 60F son, 27, Jason, and his living blow-up doll. Sorry, I know she is the mother of my grandchild, but I have extremely good and valid reasons not to like her. But I also have no interest in mending that train wreck, so we won't get into that. Lived with us for roughly 3 months. My husband and I are a blended family, and he is significantly older than I am, so his children are 56 and 53. My children are 32 and 27. Our children together range from 18 down to 4. Yeah, 4. Can you say surprise? My ex-husband has never been in the picture since our divorce, so my husband, Philip, is the only father they have ever known, as my oldest was barely 6 and my son was almost 1. Philip was the one who potty trained him, taught him to ride a bike, took him fishing the first time, bailed him out of jail twice. He has been dad, though he will never allow my son to call him that because he said he is a dad, albeit an absent one. I will never try to take his dad's place. My husband is a good man through and through. For some more important backstory, my husband is a disabled veteran who is in active combat more times than he cares to count. He has PTSD. I told y'all we were bonkers. Faced with tears of joy, unlike my diagnosis, PTSD cannot be inherited. He earned his crazy, his words, not mine. He is also what is considered elderly. He has multiple health issues due to his time in service and has been rated 100% total and permanent disability. My son was medicated until he went to live with his father at 18. Being an adult and living with someone who, I so wish I were kidding, equates mental health providers to witch doctors and/or quacks who scam insurance companies. My son stopped all treatment during his time with his father. Even when he was at home with treatment, he had 23 hospitalizations in a 10-year span, starting at 8 for having plans to unalive himself. I never once judged him because I survived my attempt. I only fought to get him treatment. We had people in home, he had a doctor he saw in person in office. We had people in his school working with him. None of that was cheap, and I did juggle bills to keep up with it, but we had the occasional power outage or busted water main, if you know what I mean. Things were tough, but I only wanted to see my son happy. Once puberty hit, he became extremely aggressive. I knew once he got bigger than me, there would be no way I could intervene without getting hurt. One of the agencies working with us even installed a panic alarm when our first son together was born. He was that aggressive. He had threatened to kill the baby on more than one occasion. Fast forward to 22. He and his father did not get along, so he asked if he could move back home, and I said yes because we had a garage apartment. I charged him $250 in rent plus utilities. He jumped on it because the price of rent. He moved in the next day. We had our secured space and he had his. In January 2024, the garage caught fire and burned completely to the ground. He was at work and his girlfriend had gone to visit her mother, but they lost everything. We decided that when the insurance adjusters came out and once everything was settled that we would go ahead and just give him half the payout and we would use our part to bulldoze the remains and if there was enough left maybe install a pool. That way they could rebuild their life. We aren't rich, but also not poor thanks to my husband's portfolio, so we had the garage with the apartment insured substantially due to the loss of income if the property were destroyed. We had an extra bedroom, and so we let them stay there until they either saved enough or the insurance came through. No rent. And since his girlfriend, 25, was with him, we relaxed a little. He seemed calmer and happier when she was there. Made sense to me. Things were going great for 3 months. Then the insurance came through. We gave him half as we had planned and told him that he needed to get on finding a place, not because we did not love him, but because we were terrified. In the weeks leading up to the payout, he was on edge and seeming to be falling back into his old ways. He agreed with us, to our surprise, and grabbed his jacket, keys, and the cashier's check and headed off to what we assumed was the bank. We were so wrong. He went to a realtor. He purchased what we shall call the unholy gaping money pit. Swore he could fix it up and quadruple its value. Turns out he had lost his job, a regular occurrence when you are unmediated and untreated and mentally ill. His solution: he was going to flip houses because he worked 3 weeks with a friend of his doing basic maintenance in an apartment complex, so clearly he had what it took to take this dilapidated trap house and make it back into a mansion. Bless his little heart. Well, things quickly began to overwhelm him. My husband offered to help, and since I am his caregiver, I went along. He had basically shocked himself so many times, he had no alternative but to admit defeat. So my husband is still being the good dad he is, and he began showing him how to do some of the electricity repairs. Now, most people would be grateful for such help and show that gratitude. Not my son. Nope, he kept correcting, belittling, and just verbally abusing my sane husband. Then he pushed him. Imagine a 27-year-old man pushing a 76-year-old man. My husband hit the ground and was down longer than I have ever seen him in our 25-year marriage. As I said previously, my husband is a veteran. He was down, but he was not out. What ensued was a lose-lose battle between two people I loved dearly. If my husband won, my son had to say he got his comeuppance from an old man. If my son won, he gets to say he beat up an old man. It seriously gives Jake Paul/Tyson vibes either way. This is where his girlfriend went from his girlfriend to the living blow-up doll, at least to me. This heifer filmed the whole thing. Her first instinct when she saw a fight was to grab a cell phone and start recording. Neither me nor my husband was aware that she was recording. Our state has two-party consent laws, another important tidbit. Once things had died down, my son stormed off. We drove home, and I tried to convince my husband to go to the ER to get checked out. He refused. Bless his little heart, too. 45 minutes later, there is a knock at our door. My husband answered and went outside, closing the door behind him, which was not the norm for him. When I opened the door, there stood 2 police officers who were explaining to my husband that it was evident from the video that he, my husband, was not the aggressor and that his actions were self-defense, but that they had arrested my son for simple battery based off of the video. Again, I wish this was a joke, but sadly it is not. This boy called the police on my husband and got himself arrested. I, being mom, bailed him out, took him home, and went back home to my husband. We had an appointment to file a restraining order, which was granted later that afternoon. When I tell you all that for the first time in my life ever since my son has been born, I felt peace. I am not lying. After walking on eggshells for so long, not having to worry about phone calls in the middle of the night or even during the day verbally, emotionally, and psychologically abusing me was what I can only image what heaven feels like. And for a year we have been happily, quietly, just chugging along. Until April, when it expired. Cue a masked man who sounds just like my son. At first things were cordial, and then eventually moved to what could be considered guarded but friendly until he needed money. Remember the money pit he bought? Turns out he paid outright for it below asking but far above what anyone with half a brain would pay for. When I said no to his request, a switch flipped, and the mask came off. I saw then nothing had changed. Additionally, he accused me of things so horrible, I will not repeat them here. In the span of literally 2 seconds, his drive Jekyll became Mr. Hyde right before my eyes. Now I mentioned I had a grandson. He was actually born on the anniversary of the fire in January of this year. To date, I have never laid eyes on him. And you know what? That is fine because at least my son and his blow-up doll cannot use that baby to hurt me. So, AITA? Before anyone questions what kind of mother I was, I absolutely was not perfect but keep striving to do better, which I think my son resents because his siblings get a much better version of mom than he did. I was young, 22 when he was born, and still so immature myself that I know I shoulder a lot of the responsibility of this. I am in therapy, I take my meds, I am stable at this time, and in large part that is thanks to my older kids because I knew they deserved better than I gave them. And I should also add his court case was dropped because the video was inadmissible. We were not advised of her recording. Told you that would be an important tidbit. And lastly, yes, I know I am the Ahole where his girlfriend is concerned, but given that whole story, I simply don't care that I am the a-hole.